Hello and welcome to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue. No signings for Leeds United just yet, but things definitely moving in the right direction and plenty of updates to bring you. As always, I'm joined by Graham Smith, YEP Chief Football Writer, dialing in today from the penthouse suite of some exclusive members club. Is that right?
No, I'm in prison, actually, for crimes against journalism. So, be here for a while.
Is that for your ratings over the course of the season?
Be a life sentence, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I thought I'd get one of those in nice and early because I know you've got the kids in the house, so you can't swear at me. So, taking my opportunities where I can. Could you say that that's similar to Leeds in the transfer market?
Yes and no. Yeah, a lot of people saying, "Why have we not signed anyone yet?" But it's only really the big beasts, isn't it, that have stirred. And of course, once they stir, then the food chain sort of kind of starts to grind into gear, doesn't it? Yeah, haven't signed anyone yet, but nor did we expect them to, as you explained so beautifully in a piece quite recently. P&S reporting period ends at the end of June, and then a brand new one starts, and you can start to commit a whole new realm of financial sin by splurging money as a Premier League club. But the difference, I think, between this year and last year is that last year we kind of knew there would be a sale, or we expected that there would be a sale before the end of June because they needed a sale for P&S. And of course, they ended up selling Archie Gray, didn't they, for a whole heap of money to Tottenham Hotspur. This year, we don't think that's the case. In fact, we're pretty certain that if they do any sales between now and the end of June, it'll be happenstance. It won't be because they need it for PSR. We think they're fine for PSR. But of course, we are expecting sales this summer. There'll be a few outgoings at least, and then there'll be quite a few incomings as well.
Yeah, should we get on to names then? Because this week has brought, I wouldn't necessarily say new names, but ones who've been in and around the Leeds United link sphere. I think it's probably appropriate way of putting it. Habib Diarra and Yaka Bijol. Wondering if either of those pronunciations are right. I'm sure that if we listen back to this over the course of the season, we'll probably laugh at how wrong they are. They are two players who Leeds are negotiating for, I think it's fair to say. One is more advanced than the other. Graham, you have the inside track on those, don't you?
Well, somewhat of the inside track. I'm not going to pronounce either name just in case we have a Groif situation on our hands, like last summer or the summer before. Yeah, so Diarra is one that they like. They really, really like him. And they like him to the tune of whatever it is, 22 million, something like that. 22 million euros, probably something like that. However, no, 22 million pounds, I should say. It's important to get that right. However, this is one that they think is less likely than the others on their shortlist for that position, kind of for the box-to-box midfield role. Now, one of the things I think we should address, which is one of the questions that a lot of people asked, is why the hell are you wasting your time on players that you aren't going to sign? And I think that's a pretty worthwhile question. It's a natural question for a fan base that looks through the prism of a half-empty glass quite often, and again, for good reason. But Leeds United, I think, want to be a little bit ambitious with some of their attempts, or probably all of their attempts this summer. And there are players that are kind of at the top of the list that they think might be gettable, and they want to have a go and try and get those players. And I think they see it as a worthwhile investment in terms of time and energy to try and get a player like that, because ultimately they can go and get players. They could have gone and got players by now, that they would love to come to Leeds, that would have been affordable, that would have been within the PSR bracket, all of that, but who might not necessarily make a difference next season that is going to see them finish 17th or above. And ultimately, some other signings this summer are going to have to be those difference makers. So it is probably worth your while going after a few players who you think there's going to be real competition here. We're going to have to really sell this project to him. And it might just be at the upper limit of what we're willing to spend on a player. But that player, if that player comes and he makes the difference and you finish 17th, then I think it was probably worthwhile in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, should I tell you, Graham, the three types of transfers that I've seen already that have taken place across England's top two divisions?
I can think of nothing I'd like to hear more.
Um, so you've got the types of transfers which Leeds aren't involved in that, Ryan Cherky to Manchester City, same as Tijani Reindeers going there. There's been other teams who've made massive transfers like Trent Alexander-Arnold to Real Madrid. These massive big money deals that are secured early in the window, either because the 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 finances involved are just outside of Leeds's remit, basically outside of the capacity to spend. So there's those. There are deals which have been done early in the window because they are low key transfers, very easy to complete. Club are very willing to get them off the books because they're going to get some money in. There's also a willingness to do the deal because no one's really going to rival you for those types of transfers. You've typically seen championship clubs doing this, signing targets that they've probably had for 6 months, but there's not a great deal of interest in them other than the team that they are signing for. And then there are the transfers which Burnley have done so far, which are the pre-agreed ones, for players who've been on loan and are now permanent players at those clubs. I'm not sure you want this summer. I'm not sure you want Leeds signing any of those types. Players who are just a bit shrug, a bit meh. Massive financial deals. I don't think you want to jeopardize your entire transfer budget on one player. And also, I don't think you should commit too much to players who have been, on loan previously, but ultimately you've got an obligation to buy, and they might not necessarily be what you need right now, as opposed to when you negotiated that deal 12 months ago. So that's my read of the situation, why Leeds haven't signed anyone yet, in addition to the PSR thing, which you summarised quite so eloquently on the back of, obviously, my diligent financial reporting.
Well, it's a team effort, isn't it? I mean, you say you don't want Leeds going for the likes of Reindeers, but would you not like a player who delivers over the festive period, Joe?
It's very good, and you know what? I'm in a good mood, so I'm willing to cut you some slack on that one. If say for example, if we were in the depths of the British winter time, I probably would have launched into a volley of swear words and abuse at just how bad that joke is. But you know what? It's summer. I'm on my uppers. Let's stay with Diarra and Bijol. Staying with them, I think we understand it that 20 million euros is probably what Udinese are holding out for the big giant Slovenian centre half. You quite like to use the word or the phrase "big galoot" on this podcast to describe central defenders who are massive in stature, bellow out instructions from the back. And I think that the Leeds target is certainly one that I could see being described as a big galoot in this team. That's the one which Leeds are maybe a little bit more optimistic about completing. With a transfer, you can never be too confident. But I think in terms of style, in terms of what he brings, you can see why Leeds would be going after this one.
I think these two targets that are the first really serious named identified targets that we know Leeds have got and are going for. That they've been in talks for so many players, and they've had their plans in place for a long time and their shortlist in place for a long time. But these are two that it's got out, and we know that they're looking at them and they're after them. I think they give us a real hint as to what Leeds United are looking for this summer when they come to the Premier League. You look at the teams that have stayed up, you look at the teams that have gone down. I don't know if you saw brand new Glasgow Rangers manager Russell Martin. There was an appearance that Sky had clipped from March when he went on Monday Night Football with Carragher, and he was asked, what would you do differently other than win some football games at Southampton in the Premier League? And he said, almost like it had taken him by surprise, which took me by surprise, that he would have had more emphasis on physicality, being nastier, work against the ball, basically getting into teams, making contact earlier. Things like being really good at set pieces and scoring from them and defending them well, defending very, very well, and what you do off the ball are massive difference makers if you want to stay up. You know, the teams. I wrote a piece recently about teams that just didn't lay a glove on the opposition when they lost the ball last season, in terms of the amount of passes they allowed before they actually got a foot in and got stuck in. And it's not, you can't say that it's a rule, because teams like Nottingham Forest didn't particularly play an intensive pressing style and make contact early, and they did all right. But if you're a newly promoted team, it is one way in which you can safeguard against conceding 80, 85, 90 goals, is defending almost in the way that Leeds defended when they came up with Bielsa. Not so much man to man, but high energy, impactful, you know, getting stuck in. You look at the two players that Leeds are targeting here. Diarra, he brings physicality in terms of powerful running and carrying the ball. And he was the scourge of England, or one of the scourges of England, in a very, very funny game earlier this week. Noticeable, actually, how many times Senegal jumped up and leapt in and got stuck in. I mean, they scored a goal from it, didn't they? You know, from being on the front, defending on the front foot, and stealing in behind a sleepy Kyle Walker. And then Diarra makes that powerful run into the box and scores. You did a piece about him. You watched quite a bit of him. Does he fit the bill in terms of bringing physicality and intensity and the kind of physical element that Leeds might want?
Yeah, and I want to say physicality in a way which might be slightly different to how most people interpret it. It's not physicality in terms of going shoulder to shoulder with players and winning duels and winning tackles. It's more in terms of the intensity, the aerobic output. That side of things is what Diarra really excels in. You know, when he does things, he's very intense with them. You know, his acceleration's pretty good, as we saw with that goal that he scored. That's not to say he's a fast player over the ground over longer distances, but he can get off the mark pretty quickly, which makes him very good at, you know, like you say, jumping in, leaping in on challenges. But I think more than anything, he's a profile of player, physicality wise, that Leeds don't quite have in the central midfield. You know, you look at Ampadu and Tanaka, both very adept, secure, composed players. You have to assume that in the Premier League, those attributes will be diminished slightly given the level of opposition. They don't really have that box to boxness to their game. Same with Ilya Gruev. You know, again, secure, will track back and work really hard. There's no doubt about that. But maybe a little bit lightweight for the Premier League, and maybe doesn't have that long busting forward run in his locker. Diarra does have that. Whilst he might not be as technical as those mentioned, or those currently in the lead squad in his position, what he does have is that box to box ability. Will make unselfish runs, will arrive into the box, again, he's probably not a candidate for the number 10 position because I don't think he's creative enough, but he is someone who is a worker for the team. And I get that, that when you say, oh, Leeds are willing to put £22 million into a player who's essentially just a workhorse, it's not what supporters want to hear, but ultimately it's what you need to survive. You're not going to have as much of the ball. You're going to need athletes before you get footballers, and Diarra is definitely one of those. Same with Bijol. He's 6'4", I think. Vastly experienced. Has played in Serie A for the past couple of years. There's been talk of Inter Milan wanting him over the past couple of seasons. He's very physical, but also on top of that, he does have a real tendency to play long balls and play accurate long passes as well. So it kind of gives you. I'd describe him as an upgrade on Strike. I don't think he's maybe got Strike's straight line speed or recovery speed, but he definitely has the physical elements. And when you're naturally going to be playing a bit deeper because of the teams you're going to be coming up against, and you're probably going to be defending your box a lot more, you need someone who's physically large, and I think Bijol fits that bill. I've kind of segued into both there and given a bit of player analysis on both. Hope I haven't stolen your thunder.
No, that's absolutely fine. But if you besmirch Pascal Strike again, I will strike you with everything within me. I do get what you mean, though, and I think if they were to bring in a player like that, we could safely say that where last summer was the summer of Daniel Farke's um, tricky little technicians, this might be the summer of Daniel Farke's great big nasty bastards, because that's what Bijol screams to me, and I don't think that I think you'll be able to look at the first few signings and think size, strength, speed, physicality, defending, attacking, set pieces. That's what I think you'll see, because last summer, what they wanted, or what Daniel Farke believed, was technical superiority will win us this league. So they went and got Manor Solomon, they got Largi Ramazani, to add to their army of small men. They brought in more small men. And, Jaden Bogle, not particularly big, but obviously great runner, very skillful, very tricky. At left back, they had Junior Firpo, not known for his brute strength in defending, certainly known for his kind of pretty football at the other end of the pitch. Tanaka, technician, Rothwell, technician. So it was very much we are going to have all the ball, so let's have the best players on the ball. This summer, I think there'll be more of a nod in the direction of we're not going to see the ball anywhere near as much as we used to. We want players who can still deal with it, but we need players who can deal with life without it as well. So yeah, big strong lads, I think, might be a little bit of a theme. Be interesting to see how it develops, though. I think one of the big questions that we could probably try and address in this week's episode that a lot of people are saying is who's making the calls, and I mean, how many people have said to us, are there concerns about the lack of experience in the room when it comes to recruitment? Because they lost Nick Hammond, vastly experienced. Angus Kinnear, who's been involved in a lot of transfer windows for Leeds, has gone. Jordan Miles went long, long ago. And now you've got Adam Underwood, who is sporting director, who's been running the academy, running Thorpe Arch and football operations for the last while. But most of his experience has been in signing academy players. And you have Alex Davies, who's been promoted to, is he head of recruitment? I think that's his technical term, isn't he? But essentially he's been chief scout, hasn't he? And then you've got Robbie Evans, who's managing director and comes from a background in data and strategy and working for the 49ers and all of that. So people are asking, where are the football men, Joe? And I think the phrase football men is a funny one, because there are men who've been in football for a very long time who I would not trust with signing a player for my Monday night football session, let alone a squad rebuild for Leeds United. And there are men who've been in football but not played football who really know their stuff when it comes to recruitment and what you need and how to harness data and how to harness scouting. I think there's a little bit of a perception from the outside, or a fear, that the nerds are going to take over. And there's probably a podcast out there with an ex-Leeds United manager that would dedicate a long section to talking about nerds with laptops and how they're taking over and they're running the asylum now and how that's not right. I don't think that's how it's working at Leeds. From my understanding, they have a bit of a, I don't know if you want to call it a football committee, because I don't like that phrase either, but you have different elements when it comes to the decision making, and you have your scouts and the scouting department, you have your data analysts, and you have Farke and his coaching staff. When they bring targets together, and most would be coming from scouts, second most probably being identified by data and the numbers and looking at profiles of who's available. This is what we want, who matches that profile. And then you'd have also players that Farke knows from Germany, Gruev, Tanaka, I think spring to mind as two players that he was previously very keen on and ended up getting to Leeds. But they all have a conflab. They draw up the profiles. They have a look at these players. They look at the data. They look at the video. And if everyone has agreed that this is a going concern, then they press ahead to make a deal. They make a short list, probably between 5 and 10 potential targets for position, and the one or two that they really like. So you'd say that DR is probably in the one or two when it comes to that position. And then Adam Underwood kind of takes the deal and tries to make the deal with the club that they're trying to buy from. Farke has got his input. I cannot foresee any scenario where a player has been unearthed because of his numbers. They've looked at him on the video and they thought, yeah, he looks good. The scouts have had a look and thought, yeah, he fits the bill. And Farke goes 9. It's not. It's not my cup of coffee. He's not my type of cake. And then Leeds press ahead, because I just don't think that's a realistic scenario. And I think that people are kind of a little bit worried that that's how it might be, that it might be recruitment by numbers and not so much by experience and insight and knowledge. I don't. I mean, does Daniel Farke strike you as a man who would just accept a bunch of players that he wasn't keen on?
No, he doesn't at all. He's reiterated the point that he's manager of this club. He's not merely head coach, and the manager has a say on those types of things. And you know what? Rightly so. That was what he signed the contract as. So he has every right to reserve that privilege. To bring a different perspective to it, you could sort of view the recruitment at Leeds as a balanced diet of sorts. You need your carbohydrates, you need your proteins, you need your fats, or you need your meat and 2 veg, right? You've got your scouts, you've got your data people, you've got your coaching staff. Everybody needs to mix in, and ultimately that only then, when there is the consideration of the opinions and the verdicts from various different sources, when they all align and they look quite good on the plate together, that's when a good meal or a good player is signed. I really hope I hope and I think they're going to sign some really good meals this summer.
Who would you describe as the meat and 2 veg of the the target list so far?
I realised
Don't
as I
answer
said
that.
that, I went,
Don't answer that.
yeah,
You've
maybe not the best wording.
you've basically described it as a melting pot, haven't it? Haven't you? You've got your number bods in the corner. Yeah, I mean, it's all very well to say all of that and say, "Don't worry, everyone. They've got people in place and they've got a system." We're yet to see the proof in the pudding. The proof of the pudding is in the tape,
Hey,
and it will be judged as every other window has been judged when we see what team comes out, how they play together, and if they get to 10 wins or however many wins it's going to take to stay in the Premier League. So whilst Leeds can be very confident in the team that they've built in the process and seem very comfortable in the way they're working, and from what we hear from speaking to people around the club but not in the club as per se, there haven't been any noises of tension and tantrums or anything. Last summer, I'm not saying there were tantrums, but there was definitely noise that suggested there was tension. And Angus Kinnear all but held his hands up and admitted to it on the square ball when he did his annual media appearance, his one and only media appearance, not with the YEP. And he basically admitted it, but he tried to spin it as kind of tension's good. It's what is that? What's that Bible verse? That iron sharpens iron. That challenge can bring good things. I imagine there will be
God, that
spirited
sounds
debates.
a lot like something Daniel Farke would come up with, not the Bible.
Iron sharpening iron. I imagine there'll be spirited debates, and there may well be times when Farke says 9, or Robbie Evans says no because it doesn't make sense from PNS, or Adam Underwood says no, a deal can't be done. The agent says there's no way, he's not coming to Leeds. But we haven't heard yet that there's been any fireworks. So fingers crossed that there aren't any, and it's a well-oiled machine, and they get the targets they want. And fingers crossed that we're not in 4 podcasts' time saying, Leeds are, they're just being patient to get the targets they want. Because the other big thing here is that you cannot, if you're going to sign, essentially, if you're going to strengthen the core of a team, right? If you're going to say, thanks very much, lads, you got us up. That was phase 1. This is now phase 2, and we need more. We can't play the same starting 11 and stay up. So we need to strengthen the core of the team. Probably a goalkeeper, probably a centre back, centre midfielder, striker, 10, left back, certainly, because there aren't any. If we're going to do that and bring players in, then you can't have them all arrive at once, all at the end of the window. They can't come in the kind of the bargain bucket period or the players realizing they're not going to get that move to Europa League side, and actually they should probably settle for Premier League and settle for Leeds United. I mean, it sounds terrible, but that is the reality of it. There will be players who'll be looking at an offer from Leeds and thinking, yeah, but I can play for Lyon or whoever, or Glasgow Rangers, teams with, European football. You can't wait for those players so much. You might be able to get a few of those this summer in August, but Daniel Farke needs to know a bit more of his starting lineup in July, particularly when they're out in Germany having training camp. You want what, 2, 3, 4. I mean, he'd probably want them all in, wouldn't he? But 2, 3, or 4 in by then. 3 is 3 too much to ask by then?
I think it depends on the deals that they're trying to strike. I can definitely see them getting 2 in for the early stages of July. I'm not sure about 3. 3 seems a lot, given how last summer went, and they were, the big fish in the small pond last summer. So theoretically, it would be easier to persuade players to come and sign. Like, come and sign for us. Look, we're going to win the league this year. It's fine. Come on.
Yeah. But nobody wants to play in the Championship. That's the other thing that they found.
True, there is that. Yeah.
Whereas everyone wants to play in the Premier League. Now, they might not want to play in a relegation battle, but there's lots of players who want to play in the Premier League because they know that if they come to Leeds and they have a great season, even if Leeds go down, the likelihood is they're going to be in the Premier League the year after, or a top 5 league, because they'll have shown that they're good. They're good for it. They're good enough for it.
You mentioned there Glasgow Rangers, and speaking of feeder clubs or partner clubs, clubs maybe a little bit lower than Leeds United in the 49ers hierarchy of teams. Are Real Betis proposing a candidacy to become a Leeds United satellite club as well? Because we've seen reports of them reigniting their interest in Matteo Joseph, and also, according to Fabrizio Romano, tabling a contract offer to Junior Firpo as well. So that would add to them also having Diego Llorente and Mark Roca of Leeds United infamy on their books as well. So, what do we make of the Joseph and the Firpo links?
Yeah, I think there's been a few premature suggestions that it's a bit further down the track. We know that Real Betis wanted Matteo Joseph in January and had a little go and didn't get anywhere with that. I think they were always going to come back in the summer and try and get him. They really like him. And there's a lot to like, huge potential still. And when you surround him with Spaniards, he scores goals. So maybe it stands to reason that if you bring him in and play him in Spain, then he'll score goals again. But whilst he's not actively for sale, he's one of the players that I think, in my predicting the future piece at the end of the season, I predicted he would go, if not permanently, then on loan. I could definitely see a permanent, because he represents profit. He was signed for just less than 1.5 million, something like that, and that was 3-4 years ago. So in terms of book value, whatever you're getting for him now is pretty much pure profit, isn't it? And say you got 7-8 million for him with the potential to boost that in the future. I'm not quite sure how the PSR works, but it's not like you make £8 million profit and you can only spend 8 million. It's a bit more, isn't it? Because of amortization and because of finances, because of things, because of numbers, Joe. Something happens, you get some money, something happens, you've got more money.
Graham, if we understood the finances of it, we wouldn't be recording a podcast today. We would be working in finance.
We'd be bathing. I'd be bathing in finance.
Say that again.
I said I'd be bathing in finance.
Yes, yeah.
Like Scrooge McDuck before your time, probably. But yeah, that would be a sale like that would be very helpful for Leeds, because once the PSR reporting period ends and we tick over into the next one, once they sell a couple of players, their headroom grows, and the more they can spend, the more comfortably they can spend on players they need for the Premier League. So a tidy profit like that, or even a tidy profit on a player that you signed, for not a lot of money, and you sell for, I don't know, 2 million more, 3 million more, all of that, or getting a big wage off the books, all of that counts and helps with your headroom. So, yeah, have a look at the squad and think, where can I see? Play a little game. Go on Soccer Base, look at last season's squad, and think he was signed for X. What could we sell him for now? Is he a candidate? Because there's going to be some, and I wouldn't bet against Mateo Joseph being one. But Leeds will need to be convinced by the numbers. And the Firpo one, if someone had said to you, you have to pick a club that Junior Firpo is going to play with next season, you would have picked Real Betis every time. Everyone would have, because it's a homecoming. You know, he's absolutely beloved there. He still supports the club. It's his hometown club, and they're putting the band back together. You know, they've got all these Leeds players. Would it surprise you if Victor Orta rocked up? I mean, you might as well, if you're signing all his ex-players, you might as well ask him who else they should sign. Yeah, I could see both, to be honest. What say you?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said there completely. You were speaking about, you know, how getting big wages off the books could potentially be really valuable, even if you're not selling a player for very much. Yeah, I think, I mean, you're not selling Junior Firpo. Leeds aren't, because he's out of contract. But you know, for next season, it's, you know, it is what was previously a Premier League wage off the bill. There are also players who've effectively ruled themselves out of playing in the Premier League next season, certainly at Leeds. Max Wöber was speaking to the Austrian press on Austria international duty, basically saying that I'm out of here. I wonder if you could Duncan Bannatyne. I wonder what that would be in sort of German, if you had to sort of change the name. Like Joseph is Giuseppe in Italian, or like Jean is Jean in France. What would Duncan Bannatyne be in German and in Austria?
I don't want to say anything offensive, so I'm treading very
So let's
carefully
not
here.
then. Let's not.
Particularly when I'm off to Germany this summer.
Yeah. But yeah, essentially, Max Wöber has said, I'm out. I mean, I think it's not very surprising. He barely played last year due to injuries and just being out of favour. I don't think he is Leeds' starting left back next season. I don't think he's Leeds' starting left centre back. He's an Austrian international. He wants to play football. He probably wants to play in Germany. I think it benefits all parties, really, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. You can say a lot of things about Max Wöber, and people often do, but I've often found that when he does his press interviews, he's very, very straight talking about stuff. You know, he doesn't really obfuscate, and fair play for just coming out and saying, you know, actually Leeds have told me I'm off. I think he probably would have considered playing in the Premier League for Leeds if Leeds had come to him and said, "We see you as our left back. You know, you're a big, strong boy. Run up and down, gallop up and down that flank. Maybe come up with the odd goal from set pieces." And he doesn't take a bad set piece. Am I talking myself into wanting Max Wöber at left back in the Premier League? What's happening here? But if
You're
Leeds
going
had
to
said
end
that,
up, you know what's going to happen? You're going to end up talking yourself into what I did last summer and saying that I actually don't think Rasmus Christensen is the worst thing in the world at right back. And then being forced to eat my words in the most violent terms when Jayden Bogle proved to be exactly what they needed.
yeah, when Jayden Bogle proved to be worth 7 Rasmus Christensens. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm certainly not going to write a piece suggesting that Leeds keep him and base their team around him.
Are you trying to suggest that I did that?
Yeah, you said Rasmus Christensen is the player that Leeds should build their championship promotion hopes upon.
I absolutely did not do that.
No, because I specifically remember you saying his broad shoulders could carry Leeds United to the Premier League.
See, that this is exactly the same as when you tell people I'm a Middlesbrough fan, which, despite correcting the record, I still get a lot of people who either believe it sincerely or are just on the wind up.
Willfully ignorant.
Again,
yeah, so Max Wöber will go. Of that, I am convinced. He was signed for what, 10 million? Something like that. So you're probably looking at breaking even.
just recoup your investment and get his wages off the books.
Yeah. You're basically looking to wash your face with that deal, aren't you? And that's it.
Wash
So
your face with that deal. Is this some sort of like Irish
it's a it's a
expression?
big it's a big it's a big term in the city. Financiers use it a lot, I think. Um, when
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
you're looking at football in the northeast with your very northeastern red and white tinted specs, what make you of the likes of Sean Longstaff? Is he the 25, 26 Jamie Shackleton? What is he?
No, he's not. I I've had the benefit of watching most of Sean Longstaff's 171 Premier League appearances, and I think for a player with 12 months left on his deal at Newcastle, who has shown himself to be an effective player in a defensive-minded team under Rafa Benitez, I think Leeds could do a lot worse, considering that he's a worker. He's less exotic. Let's put it plainly. He's a lad from North Shields. He's come through at Newcastle. He's not going out with these exorbitant brand deals and establishing a Longstaff brand on social media. He's just a footballer who goes about his business, who happens to be quite highly rated by players and coaches, which is usually a pretty good sign. I think if Leeds could get a deal done which satisfies Newcastle's PSR itch, because he'll be a pure profit sale for them, and also is for a really palatable price for Leeds. I think he adds again a profile to the Leeds midfield options that they currently don't have. In that, yes, he's steady and solid, but he's also someone who, if you wanted to play in that box to box role where he has a bit more freedom, he's capable of doing it. Just hasn't been able to show it recently because, in my extremely unbiased opinion, I think Newcastle have three of the best midfielders in the league in Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, and Sandro Tonali. Like Longstaff's never getting in there ahead of those three. And then you've also got people like Joe Willock in the team who can fulfill a similar role. So, yeah, I think it benefits all parties if Longstaff moves on this summer. And if Leeds are looking for a player with vast Premier League experience who, yes, isn't all bells and whistles, but gets the job done, it's a deal which is hard to argue with from my perspective.
I mean, it sounds really derogatory to say, but even if he was a Timu Joe Linton, that's still a very good thing, for a newly promoted side. And I don't want to do him
I wouldn't
do him
wouldn't quite
down.
wouldn't quite describe him as that. Wouldn't quite describe him as a Timu Joe Linton. I
What
don't
would you
think he's
describe him
quite
as?
as he's Joe Linton's kind of just an anomaly because he's really athletic, but he's also really physical in the traditional way. Longstaff is very, very athletic. I'm not sure, and he does get stuck in. I'm not sure whether you'd say that duels are his bread and butter.
What kind of a size is
But
he?
I'm
What height are we talking?
6'1", 6'2". He's like, yeah, he's almost like, what Scott McTominay's done for Napoli this season.
Yeah.
Scott McTominay left English football. I think a lot of people would have gone, all right, okay, like he's pretty average, pretty unsexy footballer. He's gone to Napoli and they've got shrines of him there now. I'm not saying that would be similar. I think McTominay is a slightly better player than Longstaff, but Leeds have to accept that this is the market. This is where they're at, really. So, yeah,
So you
we'll
heard it
see
here
what comes of
first.
that one.
There will be a mural of Sean Longstaff by the Marion Centre within 12 months of this podcast.
You can tell you're a journalist sometimes. You're blowing this really out of proportion, aren't you, Graham? And you're loving it as well.
My big concern with all these galoots they're signing is that if you have to do any player interviews, you're going to feel very intimidated looking it up all these
Again,
big.
you're in great form today in the piss taking stakes. I don't know what I've done to deserve this. Moved the usual podcast recording time to fit your schedule, and
Yeah. You make mistakes at this
I'm
level. Make
getting
mistakes at this
pelters
level, you
for
get
it.
punished. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we talk about the extracurricular Leeds United activity that's been happening this week? I think at the time of recording, we're at day 4 of the Gary Speed charity walk. I think it's the final leg, maybe, or the penultimate leg. Graham, you've been keeping across that. There's been some fantastic updates, some great stories. People flying in to participate in the 120-mile walk from St James's Park, obviously one of Gary Speed's former clubs, to Elland Road. It's a magnificent effort from everybody. Excellent fundraising effort for a great cause. And yeah, if people are taking a break and maybe listening to the podcast, yeah, you've got our full support at the YEP, because it's a cracking job that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I've almost felt like I've been there, doing every mile step by step with them this week. So many updates have I had. I've had more feet pics, I think, than the average pervert in England this week, from people sending me pictures of horribly blistered trotters and grippers. Absolutely magnificent. I mean, they did 28 miles in the sunshine on Wednesday, which is just brutal. And I don't think you can I don't think, as a normal person with a job or with a family, that you can really adequately prepare your body for something like this. I mean, you can go out and walk 15, 20 miles, right, on a Saturday and say, right, that's one of my practice walks, or some of my training. You might even go out the next day and do 10, 15 miles. Then you've got to work on Monday. You can't go and do another 20 miles after that. But this week they're walking, 20 miles, 25 miles, 28 miles, day after day, 5 days of walking. And it just looks extremely brutal. But everyone you speak to who does it, or at least the ones that they let me speak to, all say it's life changing. The ones that are getting kind of carted off on stretchers, I guess they don't maybe put in front of me, but everyone says it's life changing because they walk alongside fellow fans and they make friends and they talk about life. And quite a few people have said that in terms of mental health, in fact, somebody described it brilliantly as it's like one big Andy's Man Club. And that's who all of this is for, Andy's Man Club, mental health charity that started in Halifax, now has groups all over the country doing unbelievable things for men's mental health. And whilst there are both men and women on this walk, as they're walking along, they're kind of sharing life experience, they're making friends, they're making human connections, and they just seem to be having, despite the pain, having a really great time of it. And they keep coming back for more. There's people, this is their third. The group is largely made up of people who did it the first time. And yeah, tip my hat to them. They've got a goal of raising 50,000 for Andy's Man Club, and I really hope they raise in excess of that, because it would be fantastic. Yeah, and if you're interested, have a look on the YEP website. We've had updates from days 1, 2, and 3. Going to try and get another update out today if I get a chance. Just of people doing the walk, explaining what's going on, what they've been through. So yeah, well done to them. Well done to the Square Ball and all the organisers and all the walkers so far. And good luck for the 5th and final day as they bring it home to Elland Road, where Leeds United have sponsored a welcome reception for them. Probably put on a nice spread, a couple of sandwiches, some fizzy pop, sausage rolls, vol au vents, crisps, I would imagine, maybe some nuts. Actually, no, probably not, because there might be people with nut allergies, mightn't there? But an assortment of food, you would imagine, will be on offer from Leeds United. And then they can all put their feet in buckets of ice over the weekend.
Yeah, I'd recommend doing that over the weekend as well, because there's going to be some absolutely honking pairs of feet after walking 120 miles in 5 consecutive days. I imagine as well there'll be a fair bit of sunburn going on. Just thinking about the demographic, people broadly from the north of England walking in the sun outdoors for 20 odd miles a day. I really hope that people have been applying their Factor 50. Yeah, before we finish, Graham, do you have any other topics that you'd like to discuss, or are we good to wrap up?
No, all good.
All good to wrap up. Right, well, thank you very much for listening to the Inside Elland Road podcast this week. As always, we'll be back with more, hopefully more news of transfers. We said that last week and we didn't jinx it. So hopefully... Oh, wait, there is one interjection. He's just remembered after I've launched into my my closer. You've decided to interrupt. So go on. I'm going to let you off, despite the fact that you have taken the piss quite relentlessly this week.
No, it's worth it. How remiss of me to not go on record with my gratitude to Joshua Gavogi for one of the most wholesome interviews I think I've ever conducted as a journalist. We were meant to speak on Monday. He was at a wedding over the weekend. You can read this week's Inside Ellen Road newsletter to find out whose wedding that was in Italy. In a little mini tour of the world that Gavogi's been doing since promotion was won. We were supposed to speak on Monday. Time got away with him. He forgot, and then he rang me on Tuesday, full of apologies. And again, read the newsletter for the exact phrase that he used to excuse himself for his lateness. And he just said some brilliant things. Real insight into the heart-to-hearts he had with young, frustrated players at Leeds last season. His role, why he was content to go at the end of the season, even though he says that he will never get better than this. Football peaked for Gavogi this season. And what's next for him? Thoroughly enjoyed speaking to him. Just a great, great human being. And you can understand now why so many of the players called him big brother or uncle and were so over the moon to have him in the dressing room. From tasting food from the Ivory Coast, cooked by the hands of Mrs. Nyonto, eaten with the hands, which was Ao Tanaka's first time eating African food with his hands, to the young players that he's played with through his career that weren't playing at the time and then went on to do great things. And just really, really lovely insight into the dressing room from a player who's very popular within it. So if you didn't, I'll say this, right? If you weren't signed up this week and you didn't read it, but I've now sold it to you and you think, bloody hell, Graham, what have I done? I've missed it. I'm never going to get to read that now. I hate myself. Don't worry, right? Sign up. Show me proof that you've signed up. Message me on Twitter or Blue Sky or email me, and I'll make sure that you get to read last week's. I can't say fairer than that, Joe.
It's a very noble thing of you to do. It is a great interview, just to tack on to that. Thoroughly enjoyed reading it. You can thank me that there aren't a litany of spelling errors in there as sort of the final check before it went to virtual print in the newsletter. But that's all from us on the Inside Ellen Road pod. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, take care. If you've been on the walk, rest up, and bye for now.